I would say this is the most busiest time for property managers during winter time. You know, boilers break down, that's no heating, that's no hot water, that's troubleshooting literally every day since this snowstorm has come in. So, yeah, it's kept us very, very busy. Yeah.
Is this year different from the other years, or what is peculiar about this year? It looks like for the property maintenance and the snow. Is
Well,
anything standing out for this year?
yeah, this year has been extremely cold. We usually have boiler issues during the winter, Christmas periods. However, this is beyond cold.
Right.
It's I don't think anyone was really prepared for the actual drop in temperature to this scale. And most of our plumbers and maintenance team have been rushed off their feet with endless calls. This week we've had a lot of tenants calling in for us to provide heating for them. So we've had loads of electric heaters on standby, especially if anyone has children. That's our main priority. So families who are renting, we always make sure we've got electric heaters on standby for them. So yeah, it's been quite tough, very tough.
Yeah.
Anything you'd like to add, Anna?
Yeah, following what Victoria is saying, we find winter time is our peak period time, but when you find we have extreme cold weather, what the additional havoc it causes is freezing pipes.
Right.
When your pipes freeze, this causes mainly the boilers even to shut off. Literally today, we've had about 4 calls today with regards to boilers not working. Most of our properties have British gas cover, but due to the fact of so many heat issues going out, most of the plumbers won't be able to come out until next week. I know personally British Gas, our team today have been on the phone to British Gas on hold for over 2 hours and couldn't get a plumber booked in until next week.
I think we'll delve a bit deeper into this, looking at some of the things that tenants would have to do in adverse weather like this one, and also the responsibilities or obligations of landlords, property managers. What is it that they need to do to make sure everyone is happy? No one is feeling shortchanged in any way, and more importantly, the precautions to take so that you are sort of prepared, because I know that we wish that there is summer all the time or spring, or the weather doesn't get to this point, but in actual fact, we know the seasons for the year, so we should sort of be in expectation as to how the weather changes may affect our homes. So in that case, I think I would want us to be discussing some of the things that, as if you're a tenant and you know that maybe during winter time this is likely to happen. What are some of the things that you need to be doing? What conversation would you need to start having with maybe your landlord or your property manager, or that kind of thing? I don't know if we can start from there and then see if you know as a tenant that it's likely that winter time this and this happens, the boiler might break down, because maybe you can look at the boiler and physically tell it's a very old boiler, so there's a possibility that it will go out of work during the cold season or in adverse weather condition. What are some of the things that you should be asking your landlord, for instance? What are some of the conversations you should be having to get prepared?
We have a few tips, really. By law, if a property has gas, each year landlord is required to do a gas safety test, and this is simply where a qualified plumber will come round and test all the appliances. And this is a good indication to let tenants and landlords know if there are any issues. We also recommend that while this gas safety check's being done, the boiler should also be serviced. And we always recommend this is done in the autumn or in the summer months before it gets cold, because then the plumber can flush out the system and generally give the boiler and the heating and the radiators a full MOT.
Right.
So that is your starting point. And every tenant should be vigilant that the landlord is doing the legal requirement that the boiler is serviced and has a gas safety check annually. It's not always black and white, because you can do all of that and you still have problems.
You still have some problem.
But that definitely is a starting point.
It's a starting point. All right.
And as tenants, as we start getting into the colder months, start putting on your heating. Don't wait for the weather to be extremely cold.
Sometimes they are thinking of how much you're going to be spending
That's one
as far as the bill is concerned, isn't it?
Yes, so you don't need to keep it on continuously. Pull it on a low heat, maybe run it for half an hour a day, and just to make sure the pipes are fine, your heater's firing up okay, and there's no adverse issues. Normally, with a boiler's going wrong, you will hear a noise or it may start to leak. So that's why we say actually put it on and let's see that it's okay, it's coping okay for just maybe 20 minutes a day or 15 minutes a day. Did the radiators heat up okay? And then that's a good starting point. So when the winter does kick in, the boiler's not surprised that, oh my God, you're expecting so much of me. So that's tip number 2.
But during this extreme cold weather, it's best to keep your heaters during the day running on the lowest heat possible.
Okay.
Because the water that actually flows through the boiler is actually, well, most of the problems right now is the water is actually freezing, which is causing the boilers to actually break down. So try and keep your boilers running during the day on the lowest heat possible. And if you are going away, the same applies. Try and keep it running on the lowest heat possible so that the pipes do not freeze. I know that people are conscious about the cost of
keeping
running
their heating
but
running.
You must. And that leads on to another issue where people think, okay, if I shut all the windows, especially tenants, if I shut the windows, keep all the heat in the property, that won't let the heat escape. But another problem that occurs during the winter months is mold and condensation.
Right. Mold and condensation. I actually had a friend tell me quite recently that the property that he is occupying started seeing this problem. And this is a friend who has a little child in the house. And when he reported it to the property management, they said that, oh, you are causing the mold. You are causing the mold. Right. So it became a back and forth thing. And he was like, how can I be causing the mold? Because it looks like it's a condition I came to meet. And they said, okay. He actually said, you know what, if we are not making any headway, we are not getting anywhere, I would like to vacate the property. Then they said, okay, if you vacate the property, make sure you clear all the mold and paint it. Yeah. Clear it and paint it. So at that point, he said, oh, okay, so this is what you did to the previous tenant. So the condition is there, you got a guy to clear it and paint it, and then you rented it out to me. Yeah. So it looks like this mold issue in condition like weather condition like this, it's a big issue. Whose responsibility is it actually? I mean, you are property managers, you know how these things work. Whose responsibility is? Is it the landlord or the tenants to make sure that the house is safe for habitation?
That's a very good question. When it comes to mold and the condition of the property, that is the key question. How did the tenant find the property when he moved in? You have to bear in mind, we're living in the country, in the UK, where generally it's damp because it's always cold. When it rains, it's not like it's very warm. So when there is a damp issue, it takes a long time to clear. From the story you have told me for this actual situation, because it has occurred after he has moved in, 9 times out of 10, it will be the landlord's responsibility to make sure that the mold is cleared.
Okay.
Now, if the landlord has done his legal requirement to make sure the property is habitable, mold has been cleared, because we know mold causes health issues, especially among the old and young, the landlord has fulfilled his legal requirement. Now, if it does reoccur, it means that the tenant may not be managing it well. As Victoria mentioned, not opening the windows, especially after having a shower, and even cooking. You know, steam has to escape from the house.
Let me ask this. You just mentioned maybe cooking, not opening the window, maybe after using the shower. These are specific rooms. So then if the situation is such that the mold appears in other parts of the property, can it be the same issue? Can it be the same reason why it's happening?
Another thing is drying clothes in the property also
Right.
releases vapor.
Okay.
So if you're not opening the windows, you're drying clothes in a room, shutting the door, shutting the windows, that will also cause condensation. Usually mold appears on the external walls. So if you've got wardrobes, which is covering airways, blocking the pathways, you'll start to see mold producing at the on the wall skirting boards, that eventually starts to rise. So the external walls to buildings tend to produce mold as well.
Right.
So it's a two-way thing. It's controlling the mold. If it's to a scale that is more than average, then that's when you have to start looking into getting a dehumidifier.
Okay, what's that? A
Right, a dehumidifier.
Dehumidifier.
It's a bit of a
Yeah,
mouthful.
a dehumidifier.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that draws the water and excess condensation in the room.
Now, I would take a quick breather, and when I come back, I want to find out whether a tenant has the right to choose an external assessor to come and assess the property when it comes to the issue of molds and how it's affecting you, the report that you want to get. Is it your right to be able to say, oh, you know what, I want this assessor to come, or you only have to go with what the property manager wants to be done? So when we come back, we will be doing that. This is the Property and Lifestyle Show. We call it the Pulse Show on ABN Radio. Today we are looking at how the weather is affecting the various properties here in the UK. I'm sure that if you are in any part of Africa or the Caribbean, you will not be having any of these problems that we are talking about. But hey, you can still give us a call and ask any question related to acquiring a property, managing a property, renting a property, whatever it is about property. You can give us a call and ask a question. But if you have some challenges specifically to what we are discussing this evening, I'm sure that you can call and ask some questions. If my guests in the studio are not able to deal with that on air, you will be able to speak to them maybe off air after the show, and they can offer some advice and help. This is ABN Radio, London's Afropolitan radio station.
Consider that life wasted. Consider the heart of the family ripped apart. Consider the potential never realized. Are these the things you consider when you carry a knife? It's not about street cred or respect. It's about staying alive. Drop that knife and save a life. Went and slowly, supporting all family and young people.
Mixpiration with Bright every Sunday evening from 6 to 8 p.m. is just fun. It's exciting. It's a mix of contemporary R&B and pop gospel music right here on ABN Radio. Enjoy great tunes every Sunday evening with Bright on Mixpiration, a blend of great inspiring songs just for your Sunday evening relaxation. Tune in from 6 to 8 p.m. this and every Sunday on ABN Radio, London's Afropolitan radio station. This is ABN Radio.
It's really my type of music.
We play your genre of music.
We are back on ABN Radio. We are back on the Property and Lifestyle Show with my guests Anna and Victoria of OnPoint Property Limited. Now, OnPoint Property Limited provide private client bespoke property sourcing. They have amazing services, and they will be telling you a bit more. They went to Ghana a couple of weeks ago, and they went to do some work which they will be publishing online via their YouTube channel. You get to see that when the time comes. But today, looking at the weather, we felt that it's just appropriate to have this discussion on how this cold weather is affecting properties, affecting tenants, affecting landlords, affecting property managers. Like you heard, they have been very busy themselves throughout the whole week. And the conversation has steered into modes and how modes affect and what needs to be done. Now, before we went for the break, Anna and Victoria, I was asking that can a tenant actually choose someone who, an assessor, an external assessor, to come and assess what should be done as far as the property is concerned if it's got the mold condition?
Yes. Again, if the tenants have informed the property management company or the property manager and they haven't had any response back, then they can actually contact the local authority and make a complaint or pull in a report that they've had ongoing mould in the property which has caused them to have some health issues. So the local authority can actually send in their environmental health to come and assess the property.
Yes, and as Victoria's just said, once the council, and tenants must realise they do have a lot of rights themselves. So you can, even if you're not a council tenant, you can go to the local council of the borough which the property is you're living in. For example, if you're living in Wandsworth or if you're living in Battersea, then
you said if you're not a council tenant, so it doesn't matter if the council is your landlord or not, you can actually contact them.
You can contact your local council. They can send an assessor in because it's a public health, it's a health issue. So each London borough or any borough in the UK has a responsibility and care to protect those in their borough. So exercise this right, it's free. And if the landlord is found to be acting negligent, the council will force them to rectify. They'll be given a notice of works that need to be done to rectify the damp or any other issues they may come across. If they fail to do this, the landlords can be fined. And actually now some of the London boroughs and outside of London are operating with licenses. Landlords need to have licenses. So if they're not acting correctly, the council can say, look, if you don't put this property right, we're going to strip you of your license and you can no longer be a landlord to rent out the property.
Okay.
So it can be that serious.
Right. This is the first time I'm hearing this. So, in effect, if a landlord is not meeting some of these obligations, your right to rent out your property can be taken away from you.
Yes, under certain boroughs.
Under certain boroughs.
Yes.
So in that case, you have to occupy the property yourself and find a way of paying your own mortgages. That's quite serious. But well, it's interesting. If you have any question, you can give us a call on 0208 670 7300, or you can text on 0788 74 75940. That is 0788 74 75940. That is your text line. Right. So I asked earlier on that when it comes to the adverse weather and the things that needs to be done, I think you've mentioned some of the obligations of what tenants need to be doing. Are there things that landlords as well need to be doing to make sure that, as a precautionary measure, you don't even get into a state where you are being bombarded with 200, 300 calls from your tenants? Is there anything that needs to be done, and property managers as well?
Well, personally, us at On Point, before we even take on a property for management, we do a personal assessment. Us or one of our members of our team will go to the property and assess the whole property. And then we would then advise the landlord if we feel there are any emergent maintenance issues that need to be done prior to renting out the property. Or if we're taking over a property and the tenants are already in, we would then advise them. I mean, not only ourselves, but our team are trained quite highly and experienced to see things that may be of potential problems, especially where water's concerned, such as bathrooms, little things like
Grouting in the tiles. Grouting is, I think, leaks coming through properties, especially in flats, is caused mainly by grouting that's lifting away from tiles on the wall, and sealants that's also around the bathtubs. If these areas are actually showing signs of being lifted up, gaps, water can actually seep through them and cause potentially slow leaks. Slow leaks is also quite frustrating because those who live below a flat which is leaking from above, it's quite hard to find out where the leak is coming from because it's a very small area. But water during the time, does take its toll.
So I think as property managers and as landlords, you need to do that basic risk assessment. Check that your property is habitable. I think some landlords, not all, get a bit relaxed and think, you rent out a property and you collect rent and that's it. No, you have a duty of care to your tenants that you are providing them with a home. It needs to be safe. It needs to be habitable, and it needs to be comfortable. And our motto is always, a happy tenant is a paying tenant. And we personally have tenants who have lived in properties for over 10, 15 years.
With this quote that you just made, let me ask this question. If a tenant is experiencing any challenge with the property maintenance, i.e. maybe in this time of an adverse weather condition, the boiler is not working, or we've spoken about molds, or anything at all that they feel is to the detriment of them living in the property, can they withhold rent? Can they do that?
As a general rule, no. And this then refers back to going and looking at your tenancy agreement. The terms of your tenancy is all specified in your tenancy agreement. So this needs to be looked at very carefully before you sign and move into a property. As a general rule, most tenancies will state that if the property is inhabitable, the landlord has to either offer some form of compensation or an alternative accommodation. Like extreme weather conditions like we're living in now, we've got no heating, no hot water, and there's no sign of this being rectified anytime soon. The landlord then needs to think about A, housing you maybe temporarily in a hotel, or B, offering you a rent-free period while this is being sorted out. And that would be the goodwill way to sort out this situation. If the landlord is actively trying to sort out the situation and is unable to do so, usually in extreme cases, especially when there's elderly people and children involved, in this sort of weather, they should rehouse you, whether it's in a hotel room. I mean, it's not going to be the Ritz, but somewhere that you can be warm.
If you have a large family, and
somewhere that you can be warm, and I think that's the key thing.
Is there an acceptable temperature that is in the books that you work with, that there should be an acceptable temperature that makes a house habitable, or anything below that then is a problem? Because I know that, I think in workplaces the workplace should be heated to at least 16 degrees Celsius for the place to be considered a convenient place to work. Other than that, you need to get the person to work from home, or the person should not come in at all. Is something like that? Does something like that applies to tenancy as well?
Well, again, if it's spring, we won't. The landlord's not obliged to put them in any temporary housing or accommodation because it's marginally warm. Obviously, freezing temperatures like this, if there's no heating or hot water, yes, they would have to find an alternative to rehouse a person because it's inhabitable. You'd be like completely cold. You can't have any sort of hot bath,
heating facilities. So yeah, I think the minimum temperature for residential, as I said, to be comfortable is roughly around, especially in the winter, it shouldn't be less than 10 degrees in the house, or 9 degrees, because it could then prove a health issue. Again, the law really does specify against, obviously, the young, children, the elderly, and if you have any ongoing medical conditions. Again, we have one of our tenants today, no heating or hot water. I mean, they're two young professionals. He was pretty fine. He called in to the team this morning and said, look, there's no heating or hot water, but I have a gym. It's fine. I'm going to have my shower at the gym and I'm at work for the day. So, please let someone in to sort out the heating. Luckily for us at OnPoint, we have our own in-house maintenance team.
Right.
And our in-house maintenance team really bridge the gap and make our service even super efficient, because if a tenant calls us in the morning, we usually get someone out on the same day to have a look, because you've already heard today we cannot get any plumber to any of our properties until next week. So the maintenance man was able to go in today. He got there precisely 5:15 and was able to get the heating going again. The reason why the heating stopped because of frozen pipes.
All right, okay.
Now, this is quite crucial to why and how we work super efficient to most organisations, because the maintenance man is able to alleviate most of the day-to-day issues, such as a blocked sink or blocked toilet, or, extractor fan not working, and cases like today where we can't get plumbers out. He's able to take that pressure off and get things going. So we got a call just before we got to the studio confirming that the heating, hot water's going. Tenant text to say thank you very much. So we was able to manage that. In the worst case scenario, if we didn't get the heating going, we have blow heaters in our offices. We have, over half a dozen on standby, which we could have got to all the rooms. This particular property also has an electric shower, so they would have been able to obtain hot water, so that property wouldn't have been inhabitable.
When we come back, I want to find out if insurance plays any role in all these. I mean, obviously, with weather conditions like this and the challenges that come with it, does insurance alleviate the sufferings that are associated in any way? It's ABN Radio. We will be right back.
Consider that life wasted. Consider the heart ripped out of a family. Consider the potential never realized. Are these the things you consider when you carry a knife? It's not about street cred. It's about staying alive. Drop that knife, save your life.
The Discourse on ABN Radio. Engaging our community with discerning conversation.
Join me, Esther Alade, every Wednesday morning from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. on The Discourse, where we will be redefining perspectives with authentic analysis.
Join The Discourse every Wednesday from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. on ABN Radio. Mixpiration with Bright every Sunday evening from 6 to 8 p.m. is just fun. It's exciting. It's a mix of contemporary R&B and pop gospel music right here on ABN Radio. Enjoy great tunes every Sunday evening with Bright on Mixpiration, a blend of great inspiring songs just for your Sunday evening relaxation. Tune in from 6 to 8 p.m. this and every Sunday. They're on ABN Radio, London's Afropolitan radio station.
ABN Radio, London's Afropolitan station. My name is Uti Wachuku. Keep it locked here.
It's just 16 minutes to the top of the hour. We are not looking for Johnny at this moment. What we are looking to do is to make sure that you are safe and warm, and to bring you information as to how you can do all that in this adverse weather condition. It's the Property and Lifestyle Show right here on ABN Radio, London's Afropolitan radio station. My guests in the studio tonight, Anna and Victoria of ONPOINT Property Limited. It's always an excitement to have them join me in the studio, bringing their expertise to bear on the topics that we discuss. Now, before we went for the break, I asked if insurance has a role to play in this. If maybe for how this weather has affected you as a tenant, you want to claim any insurance. Can you do that? That is if you have any insurance at all. Or if you are taking out insurance, can you insure against conditions like this?
In a nutshell, for the landlord, insurance is crucial, especially if you're obtaining a mortgage. You won't get a mortgage unless the property is insured. Every landlord will have building insurance, and building insurance will cover all forms of maintenance issues such as leaks and damage to the property, terrorism, fire, etc. In practice, you will find day-to-day issues the landlord will resolve it himself. He or she will not get the insurance involved because it can be very cumbersome, a lot of paperwork, and you don't want to risk having high premiums just to fix minor issues.
Okay.
I can relate it to a story we recently had where flats above leaked into the flat below and the whole ceiling collapsed.
That was quite serious.
It was quite serious. Luckily, the tenant wasn't in the bathroom, which was good, so no one was hurt. But however, the leak caused a lot of damage. Something like that, it's probably worth getting the insurance involved because it is going to rack up to probably thousands of pounds, and it's worth probably a little dent in your insurance premium. On the subject of insurance, tenants are only required, as their own personal choice, to insure their personal items.
That's content.
That's their contents.
Okay.
Yeah, because the landlord won't insure that. If you're in a furnished property, the landlord may insure the furniture, but your own sort of laptops, PCs, clothes, jewellery, that will be the tenant's responsibility in all cases. So with regards to maintenance, yes, the landlord will be insured to a certain extent. So I don't know, Victoria, do you have?
Oh yeah, just again elaborate on that. Tenants should just have their own contents insurance in place to protect themselves.
Now, still on this issue of how this adverse weather, this cold weather condition affects tenants, landlords, property managers, what other areas are quite telling? What other areas come out to the fore when conditions like this happen, apart from the normal ones that we know we've been talking about all night, such as the damp, the molds, and then the water and the heating? Are there any other things that normally comes to the fore in
The
times
roof.
like this?
The roof, having a leak through the roof,
Right.
be every landlord's nightmare. Having leaks coming through the roof is a very big job, especially if it hasn't been maintained for years. That can be quite a hefty bill for the landlord. Usually when we call our roofers out to check on some of the buildings, it can be just a job where they just need to patch up an area with extra slates just to reinforce the area to stop leaks coming through. Again, what do you add to that, Anna? Just the main leaks coming through.
Yeah, the roofing is actually a very
Yeah.
good point, Victoria, because yes, it disturbs landlords immensely, especially during the bad weather, because whether it's damp as early as autumn, roofing generally is a big problem. And also the pipes, the pointing of buildings, if people have balconies and the pointing hasn't been maintained. For those who want to understand what pointing is, it's basically at the front of the building, especially with balconies. If these areas haven't been maintained, you usually find that when it's the winter time, this could actually cause leaks as well.
Okay.
Yes, so again, the external maintenance of the property is equally as important as the internal side.
If you are just going, or if you're about to rent a property, are there things that you should be vigilant about that may put the property in an inhabitable condition when we get into weather situations like this? Are there things that you should be vigilant about, things that you should be looking out for, such that or so that when the weather becomes as cold as it is all week, like this week, you would not find yourself in a challenging situation?
Yeah, again, viewing a property in the summer and viewing a property in the winter, oddly enough, has a huge effect.
Okay.
Wintertime, summertime, you can cleverly make everything look very nice. But again, it's along the same things we've been talking about. Smell. As you walk into a property, does it smell damp?
Okay.
Damp has a distinctive smell.
I wish everyone knows that.
But people don't always recognise the smell.
That's the recognition is a problem,
recognition
isn't
of
it?
it. It's like a musty smell in a property. And sometimes, even if you're looking and opening cupboards, you may know, oh, what's that smell? Be inquisitive. Dark mould marks is a giveaway. If you spot any dark spots in the wall, in the ceiling, that really is a telltale sign telling you there's an issue here. Again, in the bathrooms and kitchens are a good giveaway, because this is where water is. Wherever there is water causes problems. Look how the bathrooms are. Is it full of black mold? Is the mastic or the silicone, is it in order? These are the things that will also give away, is the ceiling all black? Is there mold marks? I think mold is the key thing you're looking for. Any clued up tenant, as they walk into the property, will be smelling to see if there's any smells of mold or condensation issues. And they'll also be looking for mold and condensation issues. There's something else. If you walk into a property and there's carpet, you want to check, is there moths?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. You can tell if there's moths in the property because
they eat natural fibres. So you'd see, like, most probably on the carpet, a strip of eaten out areas of the carpet. That's also another telltale sign.
And this may seem obvious, but drop-ins.
Right.
Mouse drop-ins.
That's sort of
pest control issues.
Yeah, that tells you that you may have some challenge with rodents.
With rodents, it's a very, very important one. Those are the key ones that come to my mind. The top 5 things that if I'm looking at a property to rent, I'll be looking at. And just generally, I know I'm going off the topic of bad weather, but I always normally go and look at the property a few times. How is it during the night? How's it during the day? Noise may be an important factor. What are your neighbours?
But
like?
you would not have a lot of viewing access like that, would you, under normal circumstances?
Well, you can actually visit the road, the street, anytime. You can actually just literally walk around the neighbourhood and see how does it feel in the night time, how does it feel in the morning and afternoon. So that will just give you a rough idea of the environment that you're going to rent out.
Right. You're still tuning to ABN Radio. It's the Property and Lifestyle Show. We are still picking your calls. We are picking your thoughts, your comments, and your questions. If you have any questions at all, kindly let us know. And my guests here in the studio, Anna and Victoria, will be happy to take your questions. Now, the next question that I would be I have some smarts coming at me. The next question that I want to ask is got to do with like the property managers. So, I mean, obviously, I know that with property managers, most of the time, you have two interests that you need to be looking at. You need to be looking at the interest of the landlord, your client. You need to be looking at the interest of the tenant and making sure that they live happily ever after, right? So what are some of the due diligence that a property manager also needs to be doing in light of all these to make sure that both ends are sort of happy and are on the same page? Are there any things that they do?
Just keeping communication, liaising between landlord and tenants. One thing tenants do not like is being left in the dark, especially if there's work that needs to be taken place in the property. If you're the property manager not relaying the information to the tenant, they'll get frustrated and angry. And the same with the landlord. If you're not also telling any issues that's going on in the property to the landlord and the issues escalate, the landlord also will be quite heaved off with the property manager. So us, the property manager, we're the middleman to balance both expectations of both parties.
I almost say that we're the property doctors,
counsellors, everything.
Counsellors, you name it. And Vicky,
you are the go-to people when any sickness, quote and unquote, arises. You need to diagnose and give us the prescription to that.
And Victoria, just tracking what Victoria said, communication is key. Once you are communicating with the tenant, giving them regular feedback as soon as properties arise, and those are then fed back to the landlord, you find you have a seamless relationship. And that's worked for us and is working for us in practice.
That's interesting. On the flip side, I want us to try and look at the differences. We don't have the same weather conditions that we do back home, maybe in Ghana. But let's say if somebody were to be maybe renting or is occupying a property in Ghana, what are some of the things that they may need to bear in mind with the weather conditions? Ghana is only rainy season, and then it's rainy. Oh man, I forgot my geography. I forgot my geography.
Hamatan around
January.
Ended of December.
Hamatan.
All right, so around Hamatan, the rainy season, and then the
peak sun.
The sun. Is it sunny season?
Well, I have to say it's quite hot right now. I would say this is a peak of the heat you can get right now around the Easter period, and then rainy season start. I think due to some sort of global warming, the rainy season seemed to have started earlier, but I'll say like May going onwards, right down to even September, you can have that rainy season period.
Now, when we come to the flip side, because you work across, here, across UK and across Ghana, we'll try and look at some of the similarities, the differences, and how if maybe someone is here listening, but they have relatives, friends that are renting, and some of the things they can maybe talk to them about that they should be watching out for. So when we will be doing that when we come about, you can still send us your thoughts and comments. My phone line is activated right about now. It's 0208-670-7300. And obviously, if you are driving home, just make sure you are taking the utmost care. You need to find a safe place to park if you want to call into the studio, and don't text and drive, please. We have an hour more to go, so when you get home, you can give us a call as soon as you get into your room and you are safe and warm. The number to call will be 0208-670-7300, or the text line is 0788-7475-940. You can also call on the same line, which is our WhatsApp line, and I will be able to pick your call for you to ask any question at all that you would like to ask here on the show. 9 o'clock will be time for Ajo Amapia to bring to you the Bed Talk program. And today they are asking the question whether secrets need to be kept in relationships. What do you think? When the Bed Show is up, let's know what you think. But for now, we will go for the news at the top of the hour, and we'll be right back.
Radio, London's Afropolitan radio station.
More news, more information. This is ABN News on the Hour.
From the Sky News Centre at 8, the UK's armed forces are helping to get motorists moving and doctors and nurses to work. Freezing rain is adding to the problems of Storm Emma and the so-called Beast from the East. A number of train companies have shut services early, and many drivers are spending another evening trapped in their cars. Elliot Eaton Greenwood has a farm off the M62 near Rochdale.
There was a car that had been trapped for a few hours this morning. It couldn't reverse back up because of an abandoned car, and it was just by chance that we spotted them and managed to clear the snow drift away from them so they could get the car out.
An Islamic State fanatic who tried to recruit more than 100 children to carry out terrorist attacks across London is facing a lengthy jail spell. Umar Haq, a 25-year-old unqualified teacher, planned to use guns and a car filled with explosives. Ireland's Premier says he's concerned Theresa May doesn't fully recognise the implications of leaving the customs union and single market. The Prime Minister has urged the EU to show more flexibility in talks about a post-Brexit relationship, but has also admitted that Britain can't get all at once. The Governor of the Bank of England wants to see cryptocurrency regulation to protect investors. Mark Carney says the likes of Bitcoin are showing the classic signs of being a financial bubble. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have invited more than 2,500 members of the public to their wedding in May. Those asked will come from charities the couple support, as well as schools and local communities. Emily Nash, the royal editor of Hello magazine, wonders who'll be there.
I'd expect to see some from places like the Invictus Games, Well Child, charities of which Harry's a patron. And then we're also going to see quite a lot of people from the Windsor community, so they're keeping it quite local. We know Windsor's been very central to their whole relationship. They spend a lot of time there.
And Manchester City have been fined £50,000 by the Football Association for their behaviour in their FA Cup defeat to Wigan last month. Players surrounded the referee after Fabian Delph was sent off just before half-time. That's the latest. I'm Simon English.
Consider that life wasted. Consider the heart ripped out of a family. Consider the potential never realised. Are these the things you consider when you carry a knife? It's not about street cred. It's about staying alive. Drop that knife. Save your life.
Your weekday mornings just got exciting. Tune into the new London City Show and get your day started on a happy note. Happy mornings with Nayoka on the London City Show.
Wake up to a happy and exciting morning with me, Nayoka Wari, on the London City Show, 7 to 10 a.m. on ABN Radio.
Happy mornings with Nayoka on the London City Show. The London City Show is brought to you by ABN TV, Sky Channel 235, UK's favorite black broadcaster, trailing exciting, compelling and informative programs. Visit abntv.co.uk to catch up with all of your favorite telenovelas.
This is your girl Diana Hamilton, and you're listening to ABN Radio, London's Afropolitan station. I love this station.
your name to the whole wide world. Baby, you gonna give me joy. Angela, it go better make us suffer so you don't cry. If we be having food today, I go go sky. Girl, it be true what they talk me, I know they lie you. Yeah. If you leave me today, girl, I don't die. If you drink, I will leave you, God forbid, yeah. If you leave me, die, I'll die with this, yeah. You do so many things I can't resist, yeah. I could mention your name to the whole wide world. Baby, you gonna give me joy,
King Beats, let's go.
That's Kwame Eugene with Angela, a song that is trending so much in Ghana. Well, none of my guests is called Angela tonight. They are Anna and Victoria. The show is the Property and Lifestyle Show on ABN Radio, London's Afropolitan radio station. And watch out for the Ghana Property and Lifestyle Show on their YouTube channel. That's the ONPOINT Property Limited YouTube channel. You would not want to miss the exciting information, a plethora of properties that they've visited, and they've given expert opinion and considerations on. So watch out for that one. Make sure you're subscribing to their channels. When they upload it, anytime you receive the notification, and you are one of the first people to go on there and have a look. Now, before I go to the question that I wanted to ask, let's talk a little bit about OnPoint Property. I just had a look at the video. That's the promo for the Ghana Property and Lifestyle Show, which is the let me say the visual version of what we are doing. With that one, you get to actually see the properties you take people through. Now, tell me a little bit more about that. I know you've always been passionate in bridging that gap when it comes to people who would like to buy properties in Ghana, but I live in here. But for you to actually bring them the visuals, what is it that would push you to do that? Let's talk about that a little bit before we come into our subject again.
I think it was important for us to bridge that gap through engagement, especially for the diaspora and any foreign investors wanting to invest back in Ghana. We wanted to bring the properties to life. You know, it's not about just looking at brochures or seeing what the developers are saying. We wanted to give it through our lenses, walking into the properties, giving our opinions on what we're seeing, and even the location. I mean, lifestyle goes hand in hand with property. So, okay, I really like this property, but what's in the area? Is there any good schools? Any local restaurants?
Mm.
How far is it to drive to the airport? You know, all of this important information is incorporated through the camera lens, and myself and Victoria are given our summary and overview of each property after each series. So yeah, we're really excited about this. Property, as you know, is our passion, and we are delighted that we're able to finally be that platform for many of the people who are interested in Ghana and what Ghana has to offer investment-wise. And so it works hand in hand with our various platforms. Obviously, today we're here with you on the radio. We have the Ghana Property and Lifestyle Expo, which we have annually in the UK in November. It's a date for your diary, 9th and 10th of November. And we're absolutely thrilled to announce that we'll be taking the Property Roadshow to Atlanta this year.
Right, that's great news. Exclusive for you right here. For those of you listening in the States, can you make sure that you're writing that down in your diary now? So when you take it to the States, what are the key things that you are looking for, and how different will it be from the one that happens in UK?
Well, we're taking the same concept. The same expo will be more or less just going to America, Atlanta, to the US diaspora, Ghanaian diaspora, looking to also relocate or buy investment property. So again, we're taking all the developers with us, and they will be coming to showcase all their amazing properties to the American diaspora and community. So it's exciting.
Yeah.
You know.
And in addition to the developers being there, we'll be having the financial institutions and those who want to find out more about lifestyle services. They will also be amongst the developers. So they really are going to be in for a one-stop solution for property, investment and lifestyle services in Ghana.
Great. We will definitely give out the details as to how people can contact you, and those who possibly might want to follow you to Atlanta to be part of it.
Absolutely.
But now let's get back to our discussion today. The cold, the snow, how it's affecting property, how it's affecting tenants, property managers, and landlords. I wanted us to talk about the differences of obviously we work across Ghana and UK. But before I go to that, let's look at lifestyle. How is it affecting people's lifestyle now here in the UK? Obviously, I can think of everyone being at home and not wanting to come out. But when weather like this happen, does it have any effect on what people are able to do and what they are not able to do to make them excited enough to maybe I don't know, maybe want to look out for a new property and buy or something? You are the expert here when it comes to lifestyle, Victoria. What is it that goes through people's mind when they are going through weather situations like this?
Well, again, we have quite historical buildings. So we have the Victorian periods, which is many of them are converted apartments. So living in there, if you want like a featured property with lovely Victorian architects,
right,
you can go for that, with high ceilings, bay windows, which also can bring in a lot of draft. However, it depends on, how can I say, if you want a modern building, there's a lot of insulation, there's a lot of provisions that they've built into all the new builds to make it energy efficient. The materials used to keep the building to breathe easily, so less condensation and mold will develop in the new design of these properties. So you have to think of the period of these properties you're going to rent. The Victorian builds are over 100 years old, and that comes with issues within itself. However, they are very sturdy. But in terms of the lifestyle, I would say, going back to that,
I think when the weather's cold, naturally people don't want to leave their homes. It
They
was
just
all,
want to stay indoors.
They just want to stay in stores. Even this week, it was said on the news that the UK economy, businesses are going to lose millions of pounds because people are not shopping, people are not going out, and obviously the estate agents on the high street.
The online stores are the biggest cash-ins on this one, aren't they?
Absolutely. They are definitely quids in. Even the food services, if you're a restaurant and you are not on Deliveroo or on these delivery services, you're going to be losing out.
And the taxi services as well.
Uber, taxi drivers. I mean, even tonight, they're actually giving weather warnings that most of the trains are going to stop running from 8 p.m. tonight. So,
right.
You're going to have to be thinking about how am I going to get home if you're relying on public transport. But most
sorry, I sort of digressed from the last question. So you said in lifestyle
right.
choices
yes.
for these properties.
Absolutely.
Obviously, again, key points: commuting to work. If it's a good commute, if it's a short distance, local schools. Is it a good school for my children to go to? If I'm going to rent around an area which there's reputable schools. And again, I guess those are the two things. If you've got a young family, schools, and if you are a professional, you want somewhere where you can have less commuting times and good access to transportation.
Do we even think about these when renting, i.e., during the winter time, how will my travel to work or whatever business I'm doing be affected? How will my children's school commute be affected? Do tenants think about some of these things if they are renting, or it's all happy times, especially when if you're going to look at the property during the summer, it's just happy times, so you're just getting. Do they think about it?
Yeah. When we do viewings for families especially, they're definitely looking for schools, the right school for their children to go to, the reputation of that school. So that's definitely important for them when they're selecting places to rent. And then again, the margin for nowadays schools, you have to live a certain distance to get into many primary schools or secondary schools. So that is key factor points when they're making that decision.
I find with young professionals, transportation is key. How quick and how easy is it for me to get to work? For single females especially, a key question for them is how far is the walking distance from a tube station or a train station to their home, or how far is the nearest bus stop? I find for young professionals, transportation and getting to work is key for them. But other than that, long as there's good transportation, local amenities such as restaurants or, supermarkets, people just want day-to-day life to be easy for them. I think especially when you're living in the city, whether you're here or in Ghana, these are going to be key things that anyone who's buying a property or renting will be looking at.
When we get into weather conditions like this, does it in any way affect property prices? Either rental, either buying, does it in any way affect it? Does it? It doesn't at all.
No, it would just affect the amount of people who would be going to view.
Right. Okay.
We've got external economy factors that will be generally affecting prices. But in the property market, we always know December, January and February are slow months because you have the historical Christmas period where the last thing people are thinking about is moving. Christmas is on their minds. And we normally call, in the property world, January is called the graveyard month because people are broke, it's cold. What you'll find in the winter, it affects the viewings. People will not probably show up or want to look at property. So it's not exactly affecting prices, but it's affecting how people respond to the market, as in, let's wait to March, it's March now and it's snowing, but you find springtime is usually the time where the property market's a bit more buoyant. It's the third month of the year. People know they just got to get on with life and make a decision. So it's seasonal in a sense because of the weather, but also you find people are recovering from probably overspending at Christmas and at the New Year and the January sales.
Right. Okay, so let's come to what I wanted us to look at in this hour, which is the differences. So if maybe someone has a relative who is living in Ghana and he's listening to the show, is thinking, okay, right, this is what we are facing in the UK. How different is it from Ghana? Or I have plans to maybe go to Ghana and stay for a while, or maybe buy a property and live in Ghana in the near future. What are some of the things I need to be considering as far as adverse weather conditions are concerned? Where do I need to be looking at a place where maybe when it rains I don't have a waterlogged situation, drains and that kind of thing? What are some of the things that somebody like that should be looking at?
Well, I guess there's a lot of external factors. The amenities, as he said, the drain, just adding on the drain system. We know there's areas in Ghana that are prone to floods. So you have to just literally do your homework on the area to know where all the flood-prone areas are. That will affect your property considerably a lot, because, you know, if the area floods, you just know that's going to affect your building externally. You're going to have rising damp, and that can be quite an issue, especially when it occurs continuously. Unless you put in heavy amounts, if you're not the owner, you know, well, the landlord would have to put heavy amount of investment into the property to ensure that the property is protected from all of these floods and rising damp issues to these buildings.
The drainage system.
Yeah.
Again, I think another important factor when considering where you're going to live in Ghana is traffic.
Traffic.
Yes.
Right.
Traffic is probably one of the key issues, because it affects everything, and whether you've got a young family doing the school run or simply getting to work.
When you finish, I'll tell you a story of my life.
We know that there are families that, you know, they have to get their kids up at 4 a.m. in the morning to get to, you know, to ensure that they get to school in time and they get to work on time. So logistics of where you're going to be living as averse to your work and where your children will be going to school, that's probably one of the key factors to take into consideration for location. You generally you can find the same type of property in all areas in Ghana, but it's whether that area works for you. Another factor when it comes to maintenance